So I've just renewed the rego for the Griso, and this marks the 5th year I've owned it. So on this video it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to talk about the 5 things that sucks of being a Moto Guzzi Griso owner. Alright, so coming in at number 5, even though the bike has a very traditional shape and a very, I call it a very 80s type of seat. So when you take it off, the older bikes used to have access to this where your rear tail was. You could actually fit things in there. There is just no underseat storage. So putting something like a tyre puncture repair kit or any other additional tools is almost impossible unless you're carrying a backpack or you've got some form of luggage rack. So number 4 might come across as quite minor, but to me, the Moto Guzzi Griso wasn't exactly a cheap bike to purchase, especially it had virtually no features. It'd been in production for quite some time, so you'd expect it much cheaper. And one of the things that attracted me to it was how basic it was. But what isn't attractive is this toolkit. If you take it out, there's just a handful of tools. Now the problem with that is that might just get you through a roadside repair, but honestly, Moto Guzzi, that is not good enough for what you pay for on the Moto Guzzi Griso. It's meant to be the special edition. There's just nothing special about this toolkit. I mean, you compare it to the Hasselberg toolkit, labelled Hasselberg, able to tighten up the spokes. A proper spanner for just about every application. This toolkit, I won't lay it out, but there's enough tools in this to get you going. It's got different valves, all the security bits you need to keep your Hasselberg going or tighten up those bits that come loose. Where the Guzzi, there is no way you're going to be able to adjust anything major with these tools. So if you're stranded on the side of the road, you better have some sort of roadside assistance. I mean, you'd expect that to be labelled with some sort of reputable brand or even the Moto Guzzi label, but no, just DIN 895. I don't know what that is. Doesn't even look like a high quality tool. I'm assuming that's some sort of helmet lock. I don't know. So number 3 on the list is this tank. Now, this is a big bike and it's a comfy seat and it's quite easy to do a couple 100 kilometres on it. But my tank has a range of between 230 and 245 kilometres. That's it, you're pushing. And which is quite a shame. Ideally, I would like this bike to be capable of doing 300 Ks on a tank, and that's just not the case. Now number 2 on the list is the chrome work. Now I've polished this a few times and guaranteed after the second ride it looks terrible. It looks cheap and nasty and it is a poor quality finish. It doesn't stay nice and shiny, so later on down the track I am planning on replacing these, but just very disappointing. For what I paid for this brand new, I expected all good quality bits, and that is mostly the case. But the chrome work on this is just very poor and would be one of my recommendations of things to replace when you get a Griso. So the number 1 thing that sucks about the Moto Guzzi Griso is not the actual bike itself, but it's actually the lack of bike that Moto Guzzi has in its range. There are no more Grisos, and I understand that. They had so many issues that the 1200cc motor was too far tarnished. But you look through their brands, they've got the V7, possibly the V9, only 2 versions of the V85 and 1 version of the California. Now at one stage you could admit that the Moto Guzzi California or Dace model was a replacement for the Griso, but that's no longer available. You could even say the same about the MGX21. In Australia that's no longer available, which is a shame because there is no replacement for a sporting type Moto Guzzi, and there should be. It doesn't have to be the fastest, and I've said this on a Moto Guzzi rant before. We don't need the fastest. We don't need the most technological. We just need a good, comfy bike that sounds good and gives reasonable performance. And sadly, there is nothing in that range. Now don't get me wrong, I like the V7, it's got its purpose, but there is no performance model. Hopefully one day they might develop the V85 into some sort of sports bike somehow. Moto Guzzi has always found a way to produce magnificent sports bikes. You look in the 70s with limited funds. Look in the 80s how they always had to struggle. They've always been the neglected member of any company that's owned them. The company's always been happy to punch money into other brands. Now Piaggio, I know you might think if people want a sports bike, they go for the Aprilia. But let's look at it. The Moto Guzzi has the history. It has a fan base. It's got owners clubs all over the world. You've seen it with the V85. People have bought them. They've replaced their Moto Guzzi Stelvio. They'll replace their bikes, or they'll add to the fleet. They'd like a bike they'd be able to ride that's slightly modern, handles a little bit better. So what I'm saying is, in a nutshell, Moto Guzzi, make that bike. We need that next sports bike. It doesn't need to race. You've even teased us with the MGS-01. Imagine a road-going bike like that. It doesn't need the same motor. It just needs a motor that's competent. Anyway, on that note, thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a like, share and subscribe. Leave in the comments if you agree or disagree with me, or you have a solution for my #1 problem. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next vid.